now here we are over here. Laura. Oh, yeah. I'm when her uncle was still alive, yeah, still got that. I'm not. I haven't been fun. You just
I'll get it to you. We gotta get.
Welcome everyone to the August meeting of the Grayson County Board of Supervisors. Good to have everyone here with us this afternoon. We'll have to make sure that anyone that has come here this evening that intends to speak, make sure that you have signed on up on the particular public comment sheet, and your name is there, so we have an opportunity to hear you. At this point, asked Mr. Smith if he would lead us in the invocation and the pledge of allegiance.
Right. Father, thank you
day that has been given. Thank you for all the blessings of life that you bestow upon us. Thank you for Grayson County. Thank you for the display of citizens that has come out that cares about their county. Thank you for our board of supervisors that diligently serve each month and each day of that month. Pray, Lord, that you be with them now in this meeting, for it's in your name we pray. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Maybe Sue. I believe there's a second sheet which states the meeting decorum. I'd ask that everyone respect that decorum as we conduct this meeting of the Grayson County Board of Supervisors. All the board members have had the opportunity to look at the agenda and the consent agenda. And at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye. Our first order of business will be a public hearing. And the purpose of the public hearing is to receive public comments on an ordinance altering, ratifying, and confirming polling places utilized within Grayson County. The proposed ordinance would clarify the polling place for 401 Freeze Precinct to provide that the polling place shall not be limited to the auditorium and that voting may occur at other locations within the Freeze school as the county and school may agree. Mr. Smith, the registered speakers. If we could, Zach, would you want to maybe address a little bit as to the purpose of the ordinance?
Yes, sir.
This is Mr. Hill.
Thank you. I'm the new general registrar here for Grayson County. The reason we're wanting to make this change to this ordinance is it'll make it less restrictive for that polling place in the Freeze Precinct and not limit it just to the gym in case they're ever having school or anything on election day. Also being able to move it gives us better ADA compliance with entry and parking for the voters and citizens there. You'll also have better ingress and egress for voters coming in and out of the parking lots there. And it's also less of a walk for the citizens to get to the polling place in the school if we're able to move it away from the auditorium and not be as restrictive there. That's the main purpose of being able to move it, take that word out of that ordinance there.
Does that prompt any questions from you?
So you're moving it from the auditorium to the gym?
We're looking at moving it to the first floor of the building, into the new part of the school, kind of where the teachers enter the building at. There's better handicap parking there with signage. It's more, the ADA ramps more compliant for anybody that needs wheelchair access or access through that way.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to suspend the reading of the ordinance and go with
Formally open up the public hearing. So at this point,
I'm a little ahead of the game.
okay. So we usually do a lead into most of our public hearings. So maybe I've got the horse before the cart a little bit, but I think we're still safe. At this point, Chair, you entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye. And it does appear from
registered speakers.
no registered speakers have signed up to speak. Chair would entertain the motion to come out of,
So can you make it off of one comment?
yes, sir.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, the ordinance sort of restates all the other polling places as well. The purpose of that is just to keep things current because either this time last year or the year before, I remember we had quite an effort with the electoral folks to go back and kind of piece together all the different ordinances that we've adopted over time, establishing the respective polling places. And so although you're really only changing one polling place, you're readopting the polling places for all the current ones. As I said, just to keep it current, you have one document you can reference going forward. So that's the only
Does it limit that to every other polling station to still be within the same facility?
You know, the other polling places are more open than this one. I'm not sure why it specified the auditorium as opposed to the school generally. The other polling places, I don't believe they were as restrictive, so they probably don't need to address it.
One question I had, I know there was one change in the west end, on the polling place, is that correct?
From the Grant Grange to the new school, the College School.
Is this included in that, change on the polling place?
Yeah, I think it's.
Grant precinct is here, the Grant precinct is hereby defined as Grant Grange.
What is that?
So that's.
It's now at the Grayson Highland School,
Grayson
and that
Highland
was
School.
passed to 2022.
Yeah,
Yeah, but, it's, in this ordinance, I believe the language has not been changed, so I just wonder if that might,
That might take
technicality
time.
might need to be covered.
I'm glad you brought that up. It does appear to be a typographical error.
Okay.
The address of Grayson County School.
Somebody Google right fast.
Chair, that's a question. If it requires a vote from the board of supervisors, the board of supervisors did not vote to change it from the Grant Grange to the Grayson Highland School. That was done by the former registrar.
It's in the minutes of the board of supervisors. If it was part of the most recent ordinance, the redistricting ordinance, I think would have been, of last year would have been the
That
most
was
recent.
included in the redistricting ordinance. But we still have it, Mr. Boyer, is Grant Grange.
It's 840 Grange Hall, I'm talking about 6459 Troutdale Highway.
And what's that address?
6459 Troutdale Highway.
Grayson Highland School.
Okay. Well, with regard to the grant precinct, once the public hearing is closed, I think you can have a motion to adopt the ordinance with an amendment to clarify that the grant precinct is at Grayson Highland School, 6459 Troutdale Highway.
Anybody else recognizing or seeing anything? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, I hear a motion to come out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second, okay. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye. This time, the chair to entertain a motion in reference to Alderman.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we adopt the ordinance, with the amendment that the polling place for 103 Grant Precinct is hereby confirmed as Grayson Highland School, 6459 Troutdale Highway.
And that would be with the changes also to.
Correct. It was already in there.
No, okay. Alright, so we have a second by Mr. Ivy. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye. Next, under reports, presentations, and requests, have Mr. Tom Revels, who will give us a update on broadband project. Good to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight joining me is Adam Blankenship from Gigabeam, and he'll be following me with some detailed information about the latest numbers on connectivity for the system. I want to take just a minute and step back a little bit in history, because to put our project in perspective, you have to know where we started and where we've been and where we think we're going from here. Because this is not an end-all project. People who don't have coverage today, which I'll be honest with you, is every member of that board and me expects to have coverage before the county gives up and stops working on the internet project. In the summer of 2019, our county's leadership filed an application with the state of Virginia to seek funds to support the development of the infrastructure within our community to support broadband services. Using federal databases and negotiating with the State Department of Health and Community Development, or Housing and Community Development, approximately 2,900 residences and businesses were identified and approved to be considered funded for the project. The grant supported the first phase of our communication infrastructure plan, and frankly, it was the first of its kind. It was the first in the state of Virginia where a county was allowed to work with the electric utility company to fund and run the middle mile fiber. And as you probably have heard more times than you'd like, AEP ran over 243 miles of high-speed internet fiber covering our county. So in late 19, when the money was received, Gigabeam and APCO were geared up to let's roll, let's make it happen. Well, most of us do remember that in January of 2020, something called COVID-19, or in my part of the world, White Top, we still call it Corona-19, hit our country and hit our county. And the project went dead. And for 23 months, nothing was done. They couldn't get supplies, they couldn't get people, and frankly, when you followed public health guidelines, you couldn't subject their teams to the exposure risk of running the project. But in December of 2021, APCO and Gigabeam began in earnest to build the infrastructure, put up that 243 miles of fiber, and the ground equipment that allows homes and businesses to be tied into that fiber line that runs across the county. And as I mentioned, Adam's going to talk about connectivity numbers, so I'm going to move past that and leave that to him. But I have to tell you, as a result of the diligent efforts of APCO and Gigabeam, there's a statistic that frankly we have become known for in the state of Virginia. We have more miles of middle mile fiber per capita than any county in the state. Now, that's a lot of miles, but let's face it, we're one of the smaller counties. But yet, we have the infrastructure built. As one consultant said, when this is completed, people in this county will have better internet speeds and power than people living in Manhattan. Because we got 15,000 people that might tie into it, and of course, they've got 15 million. Now, the total cost, once it's completed for the infrastructure build, will be about $8.7 million. Our county has had to invest $200,000 to have the infrastructure ability to have one of the best wired communities and counties in the country. Now, you might ask, why am I highlighting infrastructure? Because, you know, old Tom here would love to be able to get on the internet and conduct business without it dropping me out every 5 minutes. And occasionally my wife and I would love to watch a movie and not a 2-hour movie and not have to take 5 hours to see it. But the reason I'm emphasizing this, Mr. Chairman, is with the infrastructure that's been built, once all of the potential connections are made, we'll cover about 47% of the people or residences and businesses and government entities in the county. Without the infrastructure, that wouldn't be possible. Also, as you may recall, I stated the last time I was here that the 3 primary goals of our communication infrastructure plan that was put in place in 2019 is to give universal access to broadband internet services across the county, to also provide cellular service coverage across the entire county. And to me, living in White Top, one of the most important goals is to provide my volunteer fire and rescue people and the deputies who respond to calls in White Top the ability to communicate. Because today, they can't. They can't call for backup. They can't access their computers to see who's driving that car with that license tag. So they're at risk. So having the infrastructure gives us the ability to move forward on all 3 of those things. Now, before the infrastructure, gentlemen, you'll remember, not one national cellular company would even give us the time of day. Not one. Today, we have one formal proposal from a national vendor to provide internet or cellular services across the county, and we're likely to get a second. And it is because of the infrastructure that this guy right here and his team and Kenneth and your old shoot, that when you wore that old hat, the team that you represented, it's because of them that we have that ability. Now, with cellular service comes towers. There are no towers in western Grayson County sufficient for cellular service, not one. So you people that live in the eastern side, y'all got it made. Although I also know there are many of you that don't have reliable cell service. But with those towers, as they're deployed, not only can you provide cellular service and wireless services through those towers, but you can also provide the microwave equipment and the radio equipment on elevations high enough to cover our county for reliable 911 services. Without those towers, we don't have it. And you can't put them on a tree. You can't put them on a steeple that's not tall enough to look out over a mountain or down in a hollow. So infrastructure is absolutely essential, and frankly, it's been a success. Anybody I talk to, people want to tell me that Broadpoint or whatever it is over in Wyeth, boy, they just set the world on fire. They have deployed less than 20% of the fiber that we've deployed here. And you know what? They haven't had the elevations to deal with. They haven't had all the forests and the ravines and the difficulty to get to it. So yes, they've done a good job. But when you try to compare the two, in my opinion, it's not a very fair comparison. Now, don't misunderstand me. I am not satisfied with the speed of connectivity to the infrastructure. I've already told you, I don't have it. I'm not sure when I'll get it. They don't have it, and they can't be promised when they're going to get it. But this was a one-of-a-kind, first-off project in the state of Virginia. This guy's company had never worked with APCO to figure out how to work together, play together, and do the things that had to be done together. And they've had to learn that. Everything from right-of-way clearances to plugging cables in and providing electrical services to support the system. But I stand here tonight and tell you, all those major challenges have been solved, and you're going to hear that connectivity is beginning to ramp up. Now, the way you can help, gentlemen, the way you can help is to encourage your neighbors to call Gigabeam and say, I want it. Because there's still a lot of people who've been skeptical. They feel like, well, things did, they'll never get here. When in fact, they've got capabilities to serve people right now, and those people have never called to should express interest. So get the word out. Because the more they call, the more they get on the list, the faster Adam's teams can complete the project. I want to leave you this one comment. And John Fayette, you're the one that is the champion. There's a number one principle behind our communication project. And listen carefully. No citizen is going to be left behind. If your house sits under a rock that's so big there is no way to get an electric transmission to you, the county's going to find a way, if you want coverage, to help provide that service, regardless of what technology might be required. So, having said that, Adam, I'll turn it over to you, and then if there are questions. Yes, sir. You, sir. Yes, absolutely.
I came on this board in 22, and we've had issue after issue. I attended many of the Gigabeam meetings, and this is the most positive promoting of this project I've heard from you as a project manager since its inception. My question is, you mentioned towers. We had an emergency meeting here, I think it was January with Planning Commission, was it December? Put a tower on Mr. Fant's property. Haven't heard any updates on whether that came to fruition or not. But week after week, month after month, we give these pep talks to the people. And I don't know that we're being legit, because in December, we told them, and the owner of Gigabeam was here in that meeting, and he said that he was going to have everybody connected by June. We had the emergency meeting because we were concerned we were going to lose some grant money. And it was a big rush, and he said he had an extension and was going to have it through June. He'd have everybody hooked up through June. So can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Let me take the 2 points. First of all, Mr. Fant gave approval for a tower as a last-ditch effort because 4 other property owners that had better sites in their community wouldn't give Gigabeam the authority to put a tower up. In retrospect, when they began to really look at the elevation that tower would have and the number of households they could serve, they chose not to do that. But that was not their first choice. It was the 5th choice. And it was because 4 property owners refused. So, and I guess that proves that not everybody in the county wants internet services. I do have a positive look on this thing because for the first time in the last 3 months, I've honestly seen APCO and Gigabeam working side by side on the same team. It took 7 months for APCO to work through State Utility Commission guidelines on right-of-way clearances to let them hang the fiber for last drops. Because, guys, I've learned more about this than I ever wanted to know. And I blame him. Me too. APCO has a certain distance, Kenneth, on elevation where they can put an electric line, and it's safety reasons. A fiber line has to go 5 feet below that. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I got a pasture with trees in it. And guess what? Most of those trees are cut off right below the electric line, and the only time asphalt, I think that's how you pronounce it, asphalt, whatever, The only time they show up kind of right away is to trim the tops off, keep it out of the electrical grid. Well, you can't hang a fiber line through a tree. Because you all know in Grayson County, we got lots of wind. And when that wind does this with a branch and it whips that line, guess what? You just lost your internet. Because that glass fiber in there is going to break. So, Supervisor Anderson, I am more positive because I see now the potential. And I think you're going to hear, no, the numbers are not, we don't have 5,000 people connected. But we're a lot better off than we were 3 months ago. And now that we've got the two gorillas working together, there's an 800-pound gorilla and a 200-pound gorilla. Now that they're working together, we're beginning to see the escalation in speed of connected people. And the capabilities there.
What about the grant that we were at risk of losing in December? Where
We-
that at? Did we-
We went, as a matter of fact, your leader over here and I went before the Tobacco Commission. We explained the situation and the delays. They listened. They thought the delays were certainly justifiable, and they gave us an extension until June of May of 24, because they can only give you 12 months at a time. But they said if we had to go beyond that as a result of the challenges faced, they would extend it again. But they officially only did it for a year. So we're in good shape on our grants.
Okay, has the scope of the project changed?
No, it has not. And that was something, frankly, because we met several times. We approached the state about changing the scope of the project because of the cost overruns to clear right-of-ways and to do the things that were being faced by the two vendors. And the state chose not to do that. Now, they've told us that we can go back and ask for additional money, but at the end of the day, they chose as a state agency not to rescope it. And so we're dealing with what we have, and I think we're making good progress. That's the way I would conclude that. But thank you, good questions. Are there other questions? Okay, Adam?
Adam Blanchett with Gigabeam, I'm the general manager. You guys got a full agenda, it looks like, so I'll be quick and answer any questions that you guys may have. This project, the county has this broken down into 3 different areas. There's 2 tobacco grant projects and a body project. The body is the larger in size. And since the extension for the tobacco project, now the body has a shortest deadline. As of right now, it's in October of this year. So the body project alone was broken down into, the fiber project alone was broken down into 17 segments. A lot of those segments are in body. There's a few that's in the western side of the tobacco project. But those, we call them OLT segments. Those segments, we've been lighting one at a time as AEP gets their infrastructure built, the splicing done, quality control in place. Once they hand it over to us, we do our work in the cabinet, and we go live with it once it's ready. 14 of those OLTs, 14 out of 17 are live today. And I was just told on the way down here this evening that I'm expecting to get 15 through 17 live next week. So as far as the fiber project goes, once the AP hands it over to us and it's been tested, we're live in a segment. Each segment roughly, just a ballpark, it gives you a max of 250 customers per cabinet, pretty much. So if it's rural, a cabinet may cover more mileage of fiber, but if it's in town, it doesn't cover so far. So anyway, the last 3 are due to go live. Give me a little time, just in case something goes wrong, maybe 2 weeks. But my guys have already been working on it. Okay, so the fiber should pretty much all of it should be live in the next week or so. So I have had guys working on that, getting segments live. I've had other guys working on getting drops ran to customers. And then, of course, we got an installation team that once all that is complete, the fiber's plugged in, the AP's done their work, and we're all good to go. Then I've got an installation team that comes in and hooks you up. So the installations have picked up significantly now that we've got these segments live. We're getting phone calls areas where we weren't live yet, we hadn't heard from very many people in a particular segment. Maybe I'd had 15 or so. All of a sudden they see our trucks there, and now I'm getting phone calls. So it's starting to happen. So the numbers are starting to go up. The Valley project alone, Tom, with fiber and wireless combined, we're passing, as of when this report was done last week, was 2,073 total. The project calls for 2,927. We get those, and we're compliant with that. And I really hadn't built a lot of the wireless yet. I've got some towers. We're working with the Wired Road. Some of you guys probably know where those towers are. Troutdale, the Grant behind the community center there, York Ridge, Oak Hill. There's 4 towers. We're going to work with the Wired Road to get wireless on that infrastructure that's already standing to get live on that here. I've already started provisioning equipment for it, so it's just a matter of days. So as we get access to the buildings, we're going up with it. That fiber, that infrastructure Tom was referring to, that is built now. Now that the fiber's there, I can feed these sites. That's what I had to have to make those sites go live. We got to have internet to feed them. So most of this fiber's done, so I can start popping up sites everywhere we need. So I've already ran some numbers, projections on the sites that I've got planned out, and without even having to struggle to find the site, I've got 853 wireless passings on the wireless road, on the wired road sites, and a few pole sites that I'd already been working on. So we're going to be compliant with that body project pretty quick. I'm still going to continue to build. I'm not going to stop right there. But to touch on another thing you were talking about this project obviously doesn't get it all. We're not planning to stop either. We're going to work with the county, work with the state to do more projects to try to finish this. But now the backbone of this is built. You have to have the backbone to get started. Now that this thing is there, we can branch off of this with extensions and go into other unserved areas and get more of this built. There is a DHCD, or the state has announced a program they call LECAP, line extension. I don't remember the rest of the acronym, but it's for those homes that are 3 miles up a hollow by themselves, away from the fiber project, and there's not any houses around them. You would think, well, I'll never get the funding to run 3 miles up to them. That's what this project's for. That's what LECAP is for. LECAP is for you as the customer apply to the state. They've got funding for this, grant funding for that, where they select a partner to go build that to those hard to reach customers. That's what they're starting to put in place. So we're working with DHC to get compliant with them to be able to do those, so we can get those hard to reach ones. So that program is happening too. I don't know a lot of details about it, but I know it's in place for 2023, and we're trying to get with them, find the rules and everything, so we can get those customers too. So there's a lot going on. It's going well. AEP's almost done with their part of it. I think there's a section up around the National Forest that they had such a hard time with, the northern end of Route 21 when you first come out of the county, that they had such a hard time there. That is, according to Amanda Cox, scheduled. They've got the permits. That's scheduled to be done mid-September, and they're going to have that little bit of that done too. So all the pieces are falling into place finally. You got any questions for anything I'm talking about?
How many customers, wireless and fiber, have been connected roughly as of today?
Last report I got was 361 fiber services installed and 49 wireless.
About 400.
A little over 400. And that's probably a week behind because she's been on vacation.
So one of the common comments we hear is we spend a lot of time talking about the fiber, but not everybody's in that fiber.
Right.
Right. It's 1,000 feet left of that fiber.
Right.
So when folks call, they'll say, well, you're not eligible because you're not in the fiber belt, but there's the wireless component that I've referred to a few times. How do we counter that message? What is Gigabeam doing to help, and what can the county do to help to counter that message? Because
So
the goal of the program is 100% access. But it seems like a lot of citizens get led to believe that they're not going to get services because they don't get fiber.
we corrected that with our customer service team early on in this project when we started hearing that some people were being told you're not in fiber, they thought they weren't gonna get internet. I've told my people many times, just because you're not in the fiber path doesn't mean you won't be able to get wireless. I'm still building that, but I had to have the fiber built to feed the wireless. So, there are a lot of sites that I've got planned, but you know yourself, until I get an agreement from a landowner, I can't build a tower or a pole there. So I've been working through all of those, trying to get it planned out where we're gonna be. If I lose one that I was counting on, I've got to back up and punt, because they generally have to see each other, you know, you tie together when you're bouncing around from pole to pole. So I build them a few at a time. I know this is gonna work. Get this signed, go get it built, on to the next one. Once I know this is, I don't want to promise you that I'm gonna cover an area from an exact spot until I get it in writing. I've had them back out on me at the last possible minute. So once I get that agreement signed with the landowner, and then I know I'm gonna build it, I can put that in my maps and show you the coverage from it. But until I know for sure, I don't make any promises, because I may have to move it to the next ridge over and then I lose a little bit of coverage one way or another. So.
I mean, Adam, one of the things, Supervisor Fan, we've talked about doing jointly is once he does the propagation map, and he literally knows the site and can tell you exactly who can be served from that tower, then we volunteer to try to help them reach out to that subset of citizens, make people aware, and to encourage them to call and request services. So we're trying to work together to get better information out. But as he says, you can't do that until he gets approval, as you know, to plan a pole or a tower. Once that occurs, he can then determine who is potential customer base, what it is, and then we can help them.
I have areas that I plan to cover in a general area, a town or a community, or however you like. And I have a plan to cover it. Once I go and I get those landowner signs, once it's on paper, then I can build that infrastructure. But until I get that signed, I don't know exactly where that pole is going to be. It may be on this ridge, or that ridge, or this hill, or whatever. So I have to have that in writing before I can build anything. So my maps aren't 100% accurate until I've got those signatures. Then I know what I'm building.
Mr. Ivan?
Quick question. How many are on the waiting list?
Oh Lord, that's a lot. So I've got, several wireless. Now the fiber, we've got a lot of names that initially signed up early on. And once you signed up with us, we kept up with all that, right? So when an OLT area got lit, we had some communication from a resident. We would try to contact you again and go ahead and run that drop to your house and get that part of it ready. We've got almost 200 customers that we've ran their drop, and then we can't get them to call us back to sign up for service. So the fiber drop's hanging on poles, but they either don't want it they're in a contract with somebody else, or they can't afford it, or they don't want it now, or whatever reason. We build a lot of those drops, but
They
they never
have
call
been
us back.
contacted.
Yes, there are several. See, I've got the addresses on a schematic from the fiber design engineers. And each port on that fiber was assigned to an address. We had that that was handed to me that way. So there's some addresses I don't have contact information for. We mail them something, I don't get anything back. I've never heard a phone call. I've got a lot of those.
Is there any way we can help from identifying those folks?
It's
from the county?
possible. I mean, I got a marketing team that is mailing postcards out, trying every way they can think of to get some sort of contact from these addresses. And honestly, some of them, maybe a vacation home. A lot of it probably is. Some of them just aren't interested for whatever reason. I've marketed to them the best I can and some of them we've actually went around knocking on doors with door hangers. So that's about as personal as I can get with it, is knock on your door and hope you answer. So
I mean, Supervisor Ivy, one of the things that Mr. Boyer approved for me to do is when Alan calls me with a list of names or addresses, or for that matter, when you guys email me or call me, I've been getting in the car and going out visiting people and trying to figure out, because I know the land better than they do, what the problems are, who really wants it, who's decided they don't want it, to try to help with that. And Adam's team's been really good when I go out and I call them and say, we got somebody right here, it appears they're a potential, then they get them, they get on with it, we don't schedule and begin to work on it. So that is one thing we're trying to do, to help identify the opportunities for people that otherwise are slipping through the cracks.
It kind of sounds like everybody who wants it can't get it, but where it's available,
Not necessarily.
everybody wants it.
I mean, I've had several people on it, and I'll be honest, there's various other issues that we're working through. A lot of it's right of ways, And up until recently, I had begged for a solution with AEP. How are we gonna handle this? Because at one point, we initially mistakenly expected that's AEP's right of way. We leased the fiber from them, we paid a rent to be on the poles from them, they're gonna take care of the right of way. That's not necessarily the case. They take care of the right of way in their space up here at the top. Anything below that, they don't worry about it. Okay, well, the next step was, if that's the case, can we handle it? So I asked, and so somebody finally told me we can handle it. So I hired contractors and they started trimming trees. We went at it for probably 2 or 3 months. And then we got stopped and said, whoa, you can't be cutting trees in our right of way by somebody else from you. So that stopped me cold for months until AEP Legal finally got involved and had to review the new legislation that prompted this project to start with the state of Virginia, the easement rights conveying and all that sort of thing. To be honest, AEP's kind of hesitant to take a position on that. The last communication that I got a couple days ago was they advised us to consult our own legal team for their interpretation of how that is handled. They're not going to go on the hook and say, yes, you're good, because it's new legislation. They're not sure how it's going to be interpreted in court. So they advised us to hire our own attorneys to review that legislation and see ourselves. But the standard procedure we have as of right now is if it's below the neutral line and it's safe, our guys can cut it. AEP's standard policy is if it's your service drop coming from their pole to your house, that's the customer's responsibility. It's been that way for a long time. Does that sound right? Right. So that's the triplex going to your house, basically from the transformer. That's the customer's responsibility. So sometimes that's 1 pole over the house, sometimes that's 3 or 4. It just depends. Those are the right of ways that have grown up the most, is the customer drops. And it makes sense because most of us don't go out and pay attention to our power line going to the house and don't realize that it's grown up. There's some trees now, but that fiber's got to go that same route. So the fiber breaks pretty easy if a tree gets into it in the wind. That thing's got to be cleared off. So some of the right of ways out through a field that's not a service drop like that, but it's below the neutral, my guys are handling it. They're out there cutting. I had a tough time finding the right path with AEP to get the right of ways cut that they needed to cut. AEP Forestry was struggling in Grayson County pretty bad. I think maybe that's busted up into 2 districts in Grayson County. Does that sound right? Okay. So recently, the Western District out Flat Top, we had sent in several work orders to AEP Forestry that was in the power space for them to handle. I hadn't been hearing anything. I've just been sending them in pictures. I've got everything I need to do, asked everything they asked for. Now I'm getting movement on because I've got customers calling me back saying, AEP cleared our right of way, we're ready to be hooked up. This has happened in the last few weeks. That is a huge piece of this puzzle to me, to get those right of ways cleared, and it's starting to happen. The man from Asplin that does their scheduling called me personally and wanted to know exactly what's going on so he could better understand and cut that right of way the way we need it. That is a massive step to this, because that right of way has been the biggest thorn in my side since I started dealing with this, and it's happening. So he just cleared the right of way for us to do the fiber up to the Troutdale tank so that I can get Troutdale live with wireless. I needed that fiber drop to go up to that tower, and they did it this morning. So when when those things happen, I can make some progress. So it's starting to come together. I really feel good about it. I think we're gonna make some really good progress there.
So when you get a tower, how far does that reach? Like, how far does the signal go? So we have a tower on Lookout Mountain over here, Point Lookout, and you said getting permission from the homeowners. There's some issues I think we discussed in the last meeting regarding that. How far does that tower reach with the signal?
Well, remember, this is line of sight technology, okay? If you can see it from, I usually hook customers up to 8 miles away if you've got clear line of sight to the top of the tower. Point and lookout, obviously, you can see it from a lot of places. So that one I can do from a long way off. A lot of these pole sites are not designed to do that because we're trying to get down in the nooks and crannies with the pole sites. I try to strategically put it in a place to where they wouldn't normally get coverage from cell towers or anything like that. That's why I put them where I put them, is those people deserve internet too. Let's try to get it down in the hard to reach places.
Right.
So they'll go a long way, but they're not necessarily designed to.
But how many people can you put on, say, that tower on
Hundreds.
Lookout Mountain? Hundreds of people
Hundreds.
could get signal off that tower?
You could. If I end up filling a particular antenna up, you can put, well, I know the two that I've got on Point Lookout now, I can do 215 on each antenna.
Is 8 miles the max?
10 is actually the GPS max, but 8 is advisable. I have had some perfect line of sight customers that at 9, you just don't see that very often. I could, but you just don't see it very often. I've got a lot of customers in Elk Creek on Point Lookout, fed from Point Lookout. So it reaches
Do you know
that
how
far.
far? Wagon Wheel Road?
I don't know exactly where that's at, but
It's right
near
before you go down
Bottomley,
the mountain.
near Bottomley Farms is the big building there.
Past that?
Yeah, right. I mean, in that area that we've got customers around that area that are up to it there. So pretty much, if you can see it when you top over 21, if you can see the top Point Lookout, it'll work. Because I don't think
What
it's
about on the
too
other side, like this way? If we can see.
You mean
Lookout.
here?
Yeah, could you, would that
You
require
could.
extra equipment, I guess?
I just have to have an antenna to it. But now, remember, I don't know if you are aware of this, but the project area, a lot of the wireless down this way got pulled out because of the Comcast challenge. That was a big deal at the time of the application, was we had to not step on Comcast toes. So a lot of the wireless straight south of Independence and southeast corner had to get removed because of Comcast.
Is that still the road that's not been changed in the legislation?
So the fiber path through that area didn't change, but the wireless had to be removed over the Comcast territory. Yes, sir.
Okay, you just referred to the southeast.
Right.
There's people in Old Town Fairview that is in Grayson County.
Yep.
The Comcast area.
If it's in a Comcast area, I'm committed not to serve it. That's by the body rules. Now, that's under the body grant.
See, that's the thing. If Comcast has it at the state, that is an address they can serve. Not are serving, but can serve. Then the money the state gave us cannot be spent to serve that customer.
Yes.
If we were to go out and sign up 100 people and fund it, they'd come back to the county, the state would, and say, you owe me $100,000.
Can't use government money.
Now, that's if we use body money.
Yeah.
Or what if we use local tax dollars?
Until the project is completed and we zero body out, that's really not an option.
Just to keep you out of trouble, I wouldn't. To keep it from being challenged and that, it turn into a mess, I wouldn't. I'm sorry.
He was asking could custom pay for it themselves, and I said, no, not.
Well, I've got to watch what infrastructure I build and what grant I charge it to and all those types of things to keep that from happening. We don't need any bad blood from Comcast on this. So, now the fiber path does go through, it goes through Comcast area, but I can't, like the middle mile section of it, it can go through it, but I can't serve any customers on that until I get to the unserved portion. Now, there are some very southeast over next to the county line, east of Route 89. There is some unserved over there that I can use for this body project. And DCD approved this the other day in a meeting. We were there. They're going to let it be funded as part of this because it is technically unserved. So,
But you need to run the fiber to that?
the fiber already goes, it's already there. I have to be careful which customers I hook up on government dollars to build over top of. So they'll let us go through it to get there, but I can't take all the customers with me on the government dime. So.
Off topic a little bit, how long have you been doing this with Gigabit?
Long time. I'm trying to think.
Reason I asked is, I feel like it's the first time I've met you, and that you look familiar, I'm sorry.
I've been here, I just didn't speak a lot. But Michael usually does it. 2014, Michael's a friend of mine that I've known before I started working for him, and off and on, while Volvo, I was there for years, I was a welder, and I was on and off. But 2014 on, I know I've been here at least that long, but it's several years on and off.
Thank you.
Anything else I can answer for you guys? Any questions? If you need to take it out, I'll talk to you later too, whenever, if anybody's got any questions, just come see me.
Thank you.
What I got to comment is, number 480 or APCO, 4 gigabits is this thing called wireless road. And Mr. Fant was very instrumental in getting that started. And if it hadn't been for that, with all the information he got put forth in his team, that's why APCO picked Grayson County as the first county to start, because we were so well involved in it. Those 400 people still would have power if they hadn't got started. It's gonna take some time, and if you've never carried 50-pound tools up through these mountains to put cable up, you just don't realize how hard these boys got. They went through some rough stuff these past winters to get that fiber in there. And it's gonna take time, and it's gonna take patience, and it's gonna take some positivity instead of negativity that this will happen. Just, bear with us, bear with Gigabeam. APCO's pretty much done, but it's a job. It's not just, shoot it out there and it's there. But I would like to say a lot of credit goes back to the wired road and Mr. Fant and his team get things started, or we wouldn't be nowhere. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Let's take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll start the next presenter.
Run that one is hard, and this is definitely, I want to come, and I think. late yesterday, we had that huge odyssey to get it. Well, it was
Okay, that's the responsible for that.
December, we had that.
You're right. Well.
You didn't have something to be mad at.
So don't bring nothing up. I'm not going to. I'm coming in.
Are you preaching today?
I don't think I can sell
We might have to require I thought it was I stopped I've been running 300. I talked to them, I tell them I just
I'll go ahead and Call our meeting back to order. We're under a portion of the agenda with reports, presentations, and our request. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Durbin, the county attorney, and he is going to provide legal opinion on potential options for protecting unborn in Grayson County. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be here. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, before I begin, I would like to make just a few prefatory remarks. Generally, for discussion of matters that might go to litigation and for giving legal advice, I usually recommend a closed session discussion. However, it's my understanding the board would like an open session discussion of this matter so that the public can hear some of these issues and be more informed, and that in the board's view, the downsides of having a potential confidential discussion in open session is outweighed by the upsides of having the public be informed about the concerns and pros and cons that I see. But I will say that if at any point any member of the board feels that certain issues are being discussed which should be reserved for closed session, I'd ask that you please to speak up and we can talk about options for a closed session discussion as well. I just wanted to make that remark first because we are going to be discussing legal opinions.
Along those lines, I don't remember voting that we do this in open session. I don't know, you said it was the board's.
That was the sort of the directive that I understood.
Did I miss something? Did we vote on that or did we?
Well, I guess, I don't know, I would say, did we vote on it? I would say the answer is no. The instruction I received back in May was that to the staff was to go and review and see what options are out there for the county and see what other counties are doing in Virginia, see what actions they've taken, explore those actions with the county attorney, and then come back and brief us on those actions. So that was the direction I had. And so we put it in the packet for this week in this manner. We also had several questions. It's hard to hear from me last week, but last week we had several questions from our citizens, and they were wanting to be more informed. So I put that into the packet. I put it in prior to this.
I guess my question, Mr. Durbin, as we begin this, is this advisable that we do this? Because we have a public hearing scheduled and we're not giving the public a public hearing until December, right? So for you to speak to this today, is that an effort to continue to deny the public their right for a public hearing? I mean, I'm just confused as to why. I understand the administrator's explanation and I realize he was instructed to do some research. So is this advisable?
It's your judgment call, gentlemen, concerning what the pros and cons are. I'll be giving you some legal opinions. If we go forward, I'll be talking about some of the concerns that I have with the ordinance and the arguments that can be brought up against you. This is a controversial ordinance. So I do want you to be informed what the opponents of the ordinance would argue if this were challenged, if it were adopted and then subsequently challenged in a court. I'm happy to provide that in closed session if that is preferred, but I'm prepared to make those statements now.
You're prepared to make them now. I mean, I just wondered if that was if you were advising us in your opening statement that this should be something we did in closed session due to potential litigation.
I think what I'm trying to say is it's a judgment call, and I want, before I start talking about legal opinions that you have a right to have heard confidentially, I want to make sure that you understand.
So you're going to give us the issues that you have with the ordinance. Are you going to give us any pros to the ordinance? Are you going to give us any examples of how it's been challenged before in other areas
Or are we just gonna hear one side of this?
I'm going to talk about the case that's currently pending in the Fifth Circuit where the Judge Kasmerick has ruled that the Comstock Act, a plain language interpretation of the Comstock Act, that is tied in with a case by the Physicians for Hippocratic Medicine, or the Association for Hippocratic Medicine, against the Federal Food and Drug Administration. And the federal judge ruled in favor of the physicians organization. That the enforcement of that order has been stayed by the United States Supreme Court pending resolution in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then a possible request for certiorari to the Supreme Court. But the ruling from Judge Kasmerick is that the Comstock Act essentially means the plain meaning of the statute. And if that were upheld in the Supreme Court, then that would certainly strengthen the proposed ordinance.
Let me back up just a second. So the public hearing that we have set
In December.
Or is this a way to avert that, or is this part of that? Is this?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I don't think you've been recognized by the chair. But also, Mr. Durbin, I don't think has a say in the removing of a public hearing from this board. That public hearing is still set to occur, and that would be a decision of this board to cease or anything like that. I think if you feel there's issues that don't need to be discussed in public, I think maybe what staff and myself had discussed was trying to be as transparent with the public as we could as to the various issues on this matter.
I can say that I assumed the public hearing was going forward. I'll be recommending a cautious or piecemeal approach. But between now and December, when it's scheduled, we may have more information.
Mr. Anderson?
Okay. First of all, I find it amazing that you call me out for not being recognized, when you very rarely recognize others. They speak and you don't say anything.
Well, they rarely speak.
You always use that when I have something to say you disagree.
Sir, I am not going to sit up here and argue. If you go ahead and make your point.
I did.
And don't make it to me.
Well, you're the chair, and that's where I'm supposed to direct my comments, is it not?
If you have a point to make, go ahead and make it.
Well, my point was, is this an effort to avoid that? He said no, and I was commenting on while we're having this, because I wasn't privy to it. Your transparency, I like the word, the fact that you're using that now, but I wasn't privy to any of this till just a couple of days ago.
I want to be perfectly clear that no one has given me an expectation as far as what my opinion will be. In fact, I think I'd rather give a different opinion than what I'm about to give, but no one has put their finger on the scale. I'm just going to be giving you, my concerns,
Right.
and I'll be happy to talk about I guess the upside or the protections that you might have as well.
Am I still making out?
Yes.
Okay. And I didn't say that you had put someone had put their finger on the scale, but I appreciate you clearing that.
I think my point with his initial remark was just to make it clear that as an attorney, I want to preserve your attorney-client confidences unless you direct me to move forward. So I just wanted to make that clear.
One point, my memory of was the.
Was he making us?
I said Mr. Fan.
Okay. I just wanted to know.
When this started though, we have a process for ordinance development. And when this issue came up, it was as a result of a public comment period. And then the motion was made out of that public comment period to schedule a public hearing. But generally the process is that we take an issue, we seek legal counsel, we run through the staff, runs through the different options, this to me is the process it should have taken. And the reason the public hearing is in December is to buy the time necessary to do that. It can be moved or changed or whatever, but to me, this is part of the normal process that we go through that the county has used for previous ordinances. Not necessarily the lawyer speaking in a public setting, but it is the process that we seek. We seek legal counsel, especially on the board. So to me, it's part of this process and a part of discovery about what our limitations are and what our abilities are. Because I think it's important to understand in the public what authorities we have given to us by the General Assembly and what authorities we don't have given to us by the General Assembly. So I'm comfortable with proceeding.
Anyone else wish to speak? Yeah, I'll go ahead.
You know, transparency's been thrown out there so many times lately, bring it back to the board. Everybody comes to hear, can hear what goes on unless it's closed session. I think it's good that, Mr. Durbin come up here and tell us the legal side of it. We've heard the moral side of it, which we all agree. And I've talked to a lot of people about what I understand about the legal. I'm no lawyer and no plaintiff, but I want to hear what goes on, and I think a lot of people has asked me, I want to know what the legal part is. So I'm good with it.
I for sure want to move forward. This is the first time that any of the five of us have heard what this ordinance, what the legal opinion of this ordinance is, and I would just assume everybody in the county here at the same time that we're here.
Proceed. Yes, sir.
The issues I think that the board wanted me to consider to review the proposed ordinance that was offered by Mr. Dixon and Mr. Mitchell. Second, to review the engagement agreement provided by Mr. Mitchell's law firm to represent the county in the case of litigation. Third, to evaluate other options, including a resolution stating the board's views and intentions to be a pro-life county. And fourth, to evaluate other ordinance options that may be taken in the name of protecting life. As to the ordinance itself, I do have a number of concerns, and I'll touch on them as we go through. But just stating it right up front, it would be my recommendation to take a cautious approach, start with a resolution, seek an attorney general's opinion, and monitor the cases that are already in litigation on this issue, and hold off on an ordinance at this time, other than possibly modifying your zoning ordinance. That's not saying that when I might not have a different opinion come December as the litigation in other areas progresses, or if we receive an opinion back from our attorney general that would strengthen your position. But right now, as we stand here today, if we were called upon to vote today, it would be my recommendation to go with a resolution and hold off on action on the proposed ordinance. As to my concerns, first, I begin with the observation that there are currently no abortion clinics in Grayson County to my knowledge. I'm not aware of any plans or building permit applications to construct or locate one in Grayson County. There are no hospitals in Grayson County. I'm not aware of any. I've done a quick Google search on this. I don't know if there are any OBGYN offices that are physically located in Grayson County. So the possibility of abortions taking place here in Grayson County, it's more limited than you might see in other more urban areas. As you consider the ordinance, I would ask that we keep in mind that we are a local board with limited authority, and ask ourselves, what is the local problem that we're trying to solve? Identifying that local problem and building a record of the problem and its effects, that will help you defend yourself in court if challenged, and it will help you enforce any measures that you do adopt. So I invite you to think about this as a local issue. If the local problem is that the board is concerned about, for example, an abortion clinic located within Grayson County and all the secondary effects that arise from that, such as protests, traffic, possibility of increased crime or violence or other similar concerns, then you have the opportunity to address that right now through your zoning ordinance. If there are other local concerns, then we can discuss what those concerns are and consider options as well. Turning to the proposed ordinance itself, by way of background, this proposed ordinance relies on the Comstock Act, which was originally adopted in the 1870s to outlaw using the mails or other common carriers in interstate commerce, which today would be like UPS or FedEx. But it outlaws using the mail or delivery service to deliver obscene materials, birth control, and any article, instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or other thing which may or can be used or applied for producing abortion. Now, the birth control provisions have been amended out by Congress over the years. The obscenity provisions have largely been curtailed by court decision over the years. And the abortion provisions were dormant as long as Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. Now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, their pro-life groups are looking at the Comstock Act again as a possible way to limit or prohibit abortion nationwide. And that's what you have before you. I've spoken at length with Mr. Dixon and had one conversation with Mr. Mitchell, and they will tell you, as they have told me, that the reason they want Grayson County to adopt this ordinance is in the hope that you will get sued by the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, or other abortion rights group. Now, they feel like they will win, but that's the goal. This is larger than a Grayson County issue to them.
Can you help, Mr. Chair? I have a
Yes, sir.
question. That's a big statement. So are you saying one of these folks that you just mentioned said that their goal is for us to get sued?
Absolutely.
And which, can you mind telling us who said that?
Mr. Dixon has said that not only to me in phone conversations, he's essentially said that in closed session on our May meeting.
Thank you.
Now, the hope is that if the county gets sued, the hope is to take this case through trial, then to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then hopefully to the U.S. Supreme Court. Mr. Dixon and Mitchell feel that with the current Supreme Court, they may be favorable to the Comstock Act argument, and this could result in what could be a nationwide abortion ban, or if not a ban, it could help to reduce the availability of abortion nationwide. The political calculus here is that with gridlock being what it is in Congress and a favorable Supreme Court, the pro-life, mostly Republican Party does not have the votes in Congress to pass an abortion ban. The Democrat or override a veto by the current president, but the Democratic Party doesn't have enough votes to override or repeal the Comstock Act. So a favorable Supreme Court ruling would essentially result in a nationwide curtailment of the availability of abortion. That's one of the stated goals. And that's the reason why they're offering to defend the county. If you adopt this, the hope is that this will go to litigation. They will defend the county and take it through, and they feel confident that they can prevail on this. And they want as many localities as possible to adopt this so that it increases the odds of getting a favorable case before the Supreme Court. And that's the goal of this ordinance. It is seeking litigation. The way it would work, as currently drafted, is basically as follows. First, the Comstock Act ban on receiving abortion drugs or materials. It invokes the Comstock Act ban on receiving abortion drugs or materials in interstate commerce. Next, it invokes the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution and states that federal laws are the supreme law of the land and that a state like Virginia can't overrule federal law, and then recites that the board is bound to obey federal law, sort of making a a point-by-point case as to why the board would be obligated to take this measure. I think there's a distinction to be made between being bound to obey federal law and taking affirmative steps to enforce federal law, which is something that this board doesn't generally do. Local governments generally do not do. But I'll address that a little bit later. Next, the ordinance invokes the board's general authority to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public under Virginia Code Section 15.2-1102 and 15.2-1201. This provides that a locality shall have and may exercise all powers which it now has or which may hereafter be conferred upon or delegated to it under the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and all other powers pertinent to the conduct of the affairs and functions of the municipal government, the exercise of which is not expressly prohibited by the Constitution and the general laws of the Commonwealth, and which are necessary or desirable to secure and promote the general welfare of the inhabitants of the municipality and the safety, health, peace, good order, comfort, convenience, morals, trade, commerce, and industry of the municipality and the inhabitants thereof. It further provides that the enumeration of specific power shall not be construed or held to be exclusive or as a limitation upon any general grant of power, but shall be construed and held to be in addition to any general grant of power. The exercise of the powers conferred under this section is specifically limited to the area within the corporate limits of the municipality unless otherwise provided. Now, on its face, that's a very broad grant of power. It sounds fairly strong to rely on, but I have concerns about relying on a general grant of power like that in the face of a specific issue like this, especially when there's Virginia law that's contrary to it. And that's in light of the Dillon Rule and in light of Virginia Code 18.2-71 et sec, which provides that Virginia law already lays out when abortion is illegal and when it is legal statewide. So I think it's questionable to rely on a broad grant of general public health, safety, and welfare power in the face of specific legislation from the Commonwealth on that specific issue, like abortion. But relying on that general grant of power, the ordinance goes on to define the act of abortion, excluding certain acts to save the life or health of the unborn child, remove a dead unborn child caused by spontaneous abortion, and remove an ectopic pregnancy. Then the ordinance makes it a Class 1 misdemeanor to violate the Comstock Act, to use the mails to receive any article or thing designed, adapted, or intended for producing abortion, or any article, instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or thing which is advertised or described in a manner calculated to lead another to use or apply it for producing abortion. It also makes it a Class 1 misdemeanor to use a common carrier for carriage in interstate commerce, any drug, medicine, article, or thing designed, adapted, or intended for producing abortion, or to knowingly take or receive anything from any such thing from a common carrier. It makes it a Class 1 misdemeanor to aid or abet the conduct I've just described. It provides that it does not apply to a hospital acting in response to a medical emergency. But, as we'll discuss shortly, medical emergency is defined in a fairly limited way in the ordinance, which may be problematic. The proposed ordinance also contains an exception for the conduct of the pregnant woman who seeks to abort. I think that provision could also be, although it's well-intentioned, I think that could also be a problem, and we'll discuss that shortly as well. The ordinance contains a severability clause so that if any one portion of the ordinance is struck down by a court, the remainder of the ordinance remains in place and is full enforceable. This is an understandable provision, but this could lead to some unintended consequences in my view. And finally, the proposed ordinance has two potential effective dates, either immediately or with a trigger clause that takes effect only after the Comstock Act works its way through the courts and Grayson County obtains a declaratory ruling that the county may enforce the ordinance. And I'll state from the outset, there are arguments on the other side, but I'm trying to give you the the arguments that will be coming against you if we move forward and adopt this ordinance so that the board can make the best, most informed decision possible. And so I'm trying to anticipate as many downsides as I can here. I will also say that Mr. Mitchell is a very accomplished attorney who has probably considered most or all these arguments. But I think it's fair to point out that Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Dixon are seeing this as part of a larger strategy for a nationwide action. I'm just focusing on Grayson County. Having said that, the first concern I have is the possibility that you will be sued, but that you won't be able to get to the federal law questions that Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Dixon are fairly confident on, that you'll be, you potentially lose on state law grounds. If that happens, I think you run the risk. There is a risk of a possible damages award, possible attorney's fees provision. You could go through the time and administrative drain on staff that often occurs with litigation, and then may not be able to even have the Comstock Act issue, the real key to this, heard in those court proceedings. And the concern here is that local governments are not sovereign entities with home rule. The U.S. Constitution never mentions local governments. The 10th Amendment to the federal Constitution provides that the power to determine the scope and authority of local governments is reserved to the states. So the county government really is a creature of state law. And we are subject to the Dillon rule, subject to the authorizations, the limited authorizations granted by the state. And following on this, one concern I have is based on the fact that Virginia law currently permits abortion under limited circumstances. Under 18.271, producing abortion is a class 4 felony with certain exceptions. Under 18.272, one of the exceptions, any licensed physician and any licensed nurse practitioner licensed in Virginia may terminate a pregnancy or aid or assist in abortion within the first trimester of pregnancy. I think this ordinance would conflict squarely with that law, 18.2-72. Under 18.272, abortion is lawful under similar 18.2-73, it's lawful under similar circumstances in the second trimester of pregnancy if it's performed in a hospital. Under 18.2-74 and 74.1, there are even circumstances where abortion is legal after the second trimester when necessary to save the life or health of the woman as determined by a practicing physician. The proposed ordinance is at odds with these statutes in my estimation and a number of possible circumstances that you could be seeing. And the concern I have is that it could be without, as we stand here today, we don't have assurance that we could even get to the federal law questions. The county could just be deemed to not have the power to adopt this ordinance under state law.
Chairman, on that point, what's the so what? If you don't make it to the federal law, does that affect the representation that Mr. Miller, who said?
Mitchell,
sorry.
No, I think that the way the proposed agreement is structured, it's not limited to federal law claims. It's not limited to federal court litigation. But the concern I guess I would have is that there's the Comstock Act is kind of the linchpin of the entire ordinance, but without some ability to legislate locally on that topic in the first place, you may never get to federal court. It could just be a state court matter.
Mr. Durbin, I'm sure you're familiar with Merrick Garland and the Biden administration. They make the same exact arguments that you're making. And as also they're making the argument to legalize abortion everywhere and include requiring employees to pay for abortion. And employers to pay for their employees' abortion. These are the exact same arguments that they're making. They're aware of that?
I'm aware of the Department of Justice guidance. I have reviewed that, and that is the view of the Department of Justice.
Is that where you got your information?
That is the view of the Department of Justice on the Comstock Act, which I really haven't gotten to that yet. But I be aware that that is what the DOJ is arguing. That those are the arguments that others will use in litigation. What I'm talking about is not the exact same argument that DOJ's made because they haven't addressed Virginia law at all.
Talk to you. Okay. You make it.
Just to sort of conclude on this point, I think the argument that would come against the county would be that the county is a mere subdivision of the state, a creature of the state, and under its ultimate control. Under the Dillon rule, the county can only exercise the following powers. Those explicitly granted to them by the legislature. Abortion regulation is not explicitly granted. Those powers necessarily or fairly implied from a specific grant of power. I think it's hard to imply that specific grant under the general health, safety, and welfare statutes when there is conflicting Virginia criminal law on point, or those powers that are essential and indispensable to the existence of government. Again, I think the same argument applies. It's hard to imply that it's indispensable to a locality to legislate on this issue when the General Assembly already has. And there is a Virginia Supreme Court law that they ruled in a number of cases that essentially a locality may not authorize what the General Assembly has forbidden, and it may not forbid what the legislature has authorized. There's a number of Virginia Supreme Court cases on point with that, and that is a concern to me, frankly, if we were to adopt the ordinance at this time. Now, getting to Mr. Anderson's point, I do have a concern that even if a court concludes that the Comstock Act takes precedence over any limitation in Virginia law that we would have to adopt the ordinance, it's possible that a court would read the Comstock Act as the Department of Justice has read and as other courts have read in the past, that it only prevents the sending or receiving of abortion drugs or abortion materials into a state or into a situation where that's illegal to do so. And if it's legal in Virginia for healthcare providers to receive that, for example, in other words, it may rule that the Comstock Act and Virginia law can be harmonized.
But you're speculating there, because it's not legal to mail that into Virginia, because federal law says you can't.
That's certainly what, someone of the lines of Judge Kaczmarek would rule. But I didn't see any binding precedent that, other than, I agree with you, the plain reading of the Comstock Act appears to say that. But the history of the Comstock Act, as it's been interpreted in courts, is not clear on that.
But it was upheld in the Fifth Circuit and it got sent down, correct? Is that correct?
It's pending in the Fifth Circuit.
So, but I feel like it's a straw man argument when you say that it's not upheld in Virginia, because it's still illegal in Virginia to mail abortion paraphernalia appeals. Is it not?
Again,
according to federal law?
Again, the interpretations of that federal law that I've read do not say that. The Department of Justice guidance memorandum does not say that. And if you adopt the ordinance, we'll have to contend with that. I expect that there probably will be litigation. And so the DOJ guidance is, those arguments, we'll have to wrangle with those.
That's the point of the trigger clause, is it not? Because then that would solve the question.
Yes, and I think that the trigger clause would be certainly preferable in my mind at this stage than adopting it with an effective date of a current effective date. I do have some,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there anything stopping our, local sheriff's department from enforcing this as it is without the ordinance?
so if someone performs an abortion in violation of 18.2-71, it is enforceable and prosecutable in Grayson County by our local law enforcement and common
Right now,
right now.
without adopting an ordinance.
Right. So and frankly, one thing that, you know, a question that I saw in reviewing this is if the FDA regulations would allow someone to obtain a medication abortion through the mail, but that was not prescribed by a Virginia provider. I mean, it appears to me, I would defer to law enforcement on this and the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, but it appears to me that that's a class 4 felony unless it's seen through by, directed or ordered by a Virginia healthcare provider, nurse practitioner, or physician.
So as it sits right now, without adopting this ordinance, it is a class 4 felony if enforced by the local sheriff's department. If they catch them, we already have a pathway to prosecute abortion paraphernalia being sent through the mail.
Yes, if it has that, I guess the caveat I would say is if it were prescribed by a Virginia nurse practitioner or Virginia doctor, then it may fall under the exception under 18.1-72. But yes, assuming assuming someone just orders abortion pills, either, you know, the dark web or what have you, that's, in my view, that's a class 4 felony.
Mr. Chair, so you said according to state law, it could be legal, but then you said that federal law takes precedent. I'm clarifying.
So, yes, I think what you're getting at is that we've got the Comstock Act, which kind of plainly on its face says it's illegal to send abortion devices or medications through the mail or through a common carrier in interstate commerce. That's sort of the plain language. There's no Virginia interpretation. There's no Fourth Circuit interpretation. I didn't see an interpretation other than the one that's currently in litigation that would sweep so far as what you're saying. Although abortion is legal right now in Virginia under those limited circumstances. And till now, courts have generally read the Comstock Act in harmony with state law legalizing conduct of that nature.
It's legal according to state law, but it's still federal law says it's illegal to non-appeal. So I think that's a broad speculation that state law would take precedent over because it's illegal to have abortion.
Yeah, I'm not saying that state law would have precedence over the Comstock Act. I'm saying that we find ourselves in a situation where courts have read the Comstock Act to be in harmony with state law whenever possible. And there's no clear binding court ruling that says you're violating the Comstock Act or that the Comstock Act overrules those sections of the Virginia Code. We just don't have that case. It's not in the Fourth Circuit. It's not a Virginia Supreme Court case. We don't have that. Another argument that may be raised against this, and I don't know how legally effective it would be, but there is a rhetorical argument against the county, I suppose, in that there are a number of federal laws that the county doesn't seek to enforce. Top of mind is marijuana laws. Marijuana is criminalized in Virginia. It is still a Schedule I substance under federal law, under the Federal Controlled Substances Act. And I'm not aware of federal arrests that are taking place in Grayson County. We're not seeking to adopt an ordinance overriding Virginia law in reliance on the Federal Controlled Substances Act. And again, I don't see that necessarily. It may be a convincing argument to a court on the larger issue of whether we have authority to regulate on that topic. But on the concerns I have with enforceability, because there are no abortion clinics in Grayson County, there are no hospitals in Grayson County, the most likely scenario for enforcement is if abortion medications are provided to someone to take home. As we were discussing, if that's done by a Virginia physician or nurse practitioner, it's likely legal under Virginia law. So you would have a hard time enforcing it, I believe, because if a defendant is brought into court, their argument would be, notwithstanding this ordinance, Virginia law says it's legal under this circumstance. I obtained this from the doctor. Virginia law says it's legal, notwithstanding the ordinance that criminalizes it as a misdemeanor. So for that reason, am I really on notice? Do I have notice of what is legal or illegal in Grayson County? I think that's a legitimate enforceability concern that would make it hard to prosecute. And again, as Mr. Ivy pointed out, on the other hand, if an at-home abortion medication is not provided by a Virginia licensed physician, it may be a class 4 felony, and the ordinance probably wouldn't be enforced in that situation either, because you've got a stronger state law. And I have had some discussions with Sheriff Vaughn and with Commonwealth's Attorney Boyles, and I don't want to put words in either of their mouth. I think it's fair to say that Mr. Boyles does have some concerns as to enforceability as well. Sheriff Vaughn didn't raise those concerns. I don't want to speak for him, but I do have some concerns about the enforceability of the ordinance. Another concern I have is the exception for the health of the mother. There's an exception to the definition of abortion for acts taken to save the life or health of the unborn, but not necessarily for the health of the mother. There is an exception for ectopic pregnancies. I think that's a fairly limited circumstance. There's an exception for medical emergencies, but that's defined fairly narrowly in this ordinance. Medical emergency under the ordinance means a life-threatening physical condition aggravated by, caused by, or arising from a pregnancy that, as certified by a physician, places the woman in danger of death or a serious risk of substantial impairment of a major bodily function unless an abortion is performed. If this ordinance is adopted, I think the words life-threatening probably should be deleted. As it currently stands, a physical condition that could render the woman infertile, it's only treatable if it's also life-threatening. I don't think that's necessarily the intention, but that seems to be the effect of the language. In that situation, a physician who feels that the emergency would only sterilize or otherwise be debilitating but not kill the woman might be unable to treat her. Now, again, I recognize that there aren't hospitals or abortion clinics in Grayson County, but just generally talking about the enforceability, I think that not having an exception for the health of the mother may be problematic. And it could lead to some paradoxes in that having a life-threatening cancer diagnosis would not constitute a medical emergency under this definition because the cancer was not necessarily aggravated by, caused by, or arising from pregnancy. In other words, if the mother finds out that she has cancer while pregnant, this ordinance might be deemed to prevent her treatment because the thing that is threatening her life, the cancer, wasn't caused by the pregnancy. So I think that would need to be amended before you would put in the ordinance in effect. And I do note that there's litigation in the state of Texas. The state is currently being sued by several plaintiffs over a similar issue. Another concern I see is that there's an exception from prosecution for the pregnant woman herself, but anyone who aids or abets her is criminally liable. So you could have a situation where a husband and a wife or an unmarried couple finds out that the woman is pregnant. They both seek abortion medication in violation of the ordinance, and they both take steps to cause the abortion. In that scenario, you have two people undertaking the same course of conduct together, committing the same actions, but only the male could ever be prosecuted. I do have some concerns that there could be an equal protection issue there that would cause the limitation to the mother to be thrown out. And with the severability provision that's in the ordinance, you could end up in a situation where, okay, now the woman who was seeking the abortion is also subject to prosecution. There could be unintended consequences with that. Another concern I have is that with both this exception and the life and health exceptions is that the Comstock Act itself doesn't appear to contain those exceptions. So we may want to be careful what we wish for. If we adopt this ordinance, go through litigation, and are successful in having the plain language interpretation of the Comstock Act prevail over state law, we may end up losing the exceptions as well under a strict reading of the statute. In other words, the court could say, yes, the Comstock Act is supreme, but because there are no exceptions in the Comstock Act for the life or health of the mother, then the ordinance cannot have those exceptions either. Again, it's not clear to me. An additional concern I have is that this relates to shipping or receiving through the mails or common carriers in interstate commerce, but it doesn't actually regulate intrastate activities. So this may not apply to abortion drugs shipped from one location in Virginia into Grayson County. It would only be from outside of Virginia into Grayson County, which could be paradoxical in having two tracks of enforcement. So again, as to this ordinance, I'd ask you to consider what's the local problem we're trying to address with this. Again, this is a local government with limited powers. We don't have expansive powers, especially when a locality's actions are contrary to existing state law. Given all this, it's my recommendation to take other more cautious steps before you move forward with adopting an ordinance. First, you can adopt a resolution stating the board's and the county's views on this subject and calling for legislation in the General Assembly. And I do not think that a resolution is merely virtue signaling. It's not nothing. A resolution is a statement of principle. It is part of the political process. It sends a message to the General Assembly as to the views of this community. Second, I think you can look at amending the zoning ordinance to address problems that might arise from having abortion clinics in Grayson County. There are ways to regulate those secondary effects if that is a concern. Another step you could take is to seek an opinion from the Attorney General, the Virginia Attorney General. If the AG opines that an ordinance like this can be adopted, well, that gives us some measure of confidence that maybe we can move forward with this. If the AG opines against it, that's probably a good sign that we should not proceed further with the ordinance and instead focus on Richmond and the General Assembly. It's my understanding that an AG opinion has been requested, so I think it would be wise to wait and see what kind of response is offered. Fourth, another step would be to continue to monitor the other cases that are currently in litigation. The case of the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus FDA is currently pending in the Fifth Circuit. Judge Kaczmarek, as we discussed, has ruled in a way similar to what this ordinance is seeking to do. His ruling, the effect of his ruling is stayed pending a decision of the Fifth Circuit and possible certiorari of the Supreme Court. I suggest we wait to watch that case and similar cases closely and based on the outcome in those matters, reevaluate the situation. Now, I will say that if you are inclined to move forward with adoption of the ordinance, it would be safer to adopt it with the trigger clause. That provides that it only goes into effect if we're able to obtain a declaratory judgment from a court that we can enact and enforce those Comstock Act provisions. It's safer than putting the ordinance in effect immediately. But at that point, it's not going to be enforced, so one wonders why that's preferable to a resolution. The reason why the trigger clause is a safer option is that if you were to be sued on the ordinance with the trigger clause, you're likely to be able to get that dismissed based on the fact that it's not being enforced right now. It's not in effect. The case is not right, so judge, throw it out. But again, if it's not, if you succeed in getting it dismissed, then we're not moving forward to vindicate the Comstock Act provisions. That's just not going to be decided because you're getting it thrown out on a preliminary basis. I will say that I do respect the moral position of those who are in favor of this ordinance. But again, it's hard for me to advise you to take an action that appears to be in hopes of getting the county sued. I feel like it's my job to keep you out of litigation whenever I can. And so I would recommend a cautious approach here. Finally, with regard to the engagement agreement from Mr. Mitchell's law firm, if you proceed to adopt the ordinance, I'd suggest that, I think it's fine as far as it goes, but if you adopt the ordinance, I think it would be my recommendation to go back to Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Dixon, to determine and clarify whether there would be any cost of litigation charge. The fees are clearly not going to be charged to the county, the legal fees. And the language as it's currently stated is that it would be at no charge or at no cost to the county. I think that I read that to mean that transcript costs, court reporters costs, filing fees, things of that nature would also be covered by the Mitchell law firm, but I would want to clarify that and spell that out in detail. I would also recommend that if possible, we have an agreement that the county be indemnified and held harmless if there's any monetary judgment against the county, trebling of damages, any attorney's fees award, because I believe if litigation would arise from the adoption of the proposed ordinance, I feel confident that the plaintiffs in that case would ask for an award of their attorney's fees to be paid by the county if they win. So I would want to clarify whether that would be offered to be reimbursed to the county as well. And gentlemen, that's really all that I had. I'd be happy to address any other issues or questions that you have. But again, I think a cautious, stepwise approach is my recommendation.
So as it refers to the ordinance, you said the goal of the ordinance is a nationwide abortion ban.
Or something closer to that.
Right. And I think that's accurate. And I agree with that. I think the opposition understands that as well, that it's part of a bigger picture. But I think the majority of the citizens in this county have expressed that they would like to see a nationwide abortion ban. And if Grayson County can be a catalyst in that, I think the citizens of this county overwhelmingly support that. And I've sit here and you went through and you broke down the ordinance, and I took some notes, but you really did a major critique of federal law. And I keep going back to Merrick Garland and the Biden administration, because these are your arguments are their arguments. They're the same exact arguments. And if they get their way, abortion's going to be legal everywhere. And it's not going to matter. They're going to mail the bill. They're going to require employers to pay for their employees to have abortion. And that's the goal of their administration. So I think this county overwhelmingly would support this ordinance.
there's a few little things you mentioned there that we could address with, the Mitchell Law Firm. Not opposed to that, but this is a bigger picture. That's why we've had the turnout. That's why we've gotten threats from the ACLU. We've gotten threats from the Democrat Party of litigation and others in the community that, you know, if we proceed, they're going to sue us. So I think overwhelmingly this community would love to be a part of stopping abortion nationwide. And I just wanted to mention that.
So Mr. Anderson, it is, I was not elected by the voters. You were, it is your call. I'm only making a recommendation.
Right.
So certainly, I want to give you sort of my concerns, my worst case scenario, and then it will be up to you to decide whether the risks and rewards balance out. I've given you the risks and you've articulated the rewards. So, it's certainly, your decision.
Right.
I will say though that nothing that I've laid out here would, in my view, open up the door to any change in existing Virginia law or override Virginia law, which outlaws, abortion, except in those first trimester circumstances, second trimester circumstances, and then third trimester circumstances only in a medical emergency. I don't believe there's anything in proceeding with the ordinance or not proceeding or any of the critiques that I've offered today that opens the door to the federal government overruling Virginia without additional legislation. And frankly, that's not going to happen.
I guess I'm still, where my head is about the authorities we have as a local government. Our power comes from the Virginia Constitution, not the federal Constitution. We have to follow the laws of the nation, but we also have to, but our authorities come from the Virginia Constitution and the General Assembly and what they've given us to do. So I guess I'm real hesitant to, when we did the Second Amendment thing back in 2019, there was pending legislation in front of the General Assembly related to gun laws, and so we did a resolution then in support of the Second Amendment to try to counter, at least voice our opinion to the legislature about how we felt about guns, because we have a gun culture, we don't have a gun problem with Grayson. And so in my mind, where I'm at right now, I guess I'm more on the side of the cautious approach because of the pending legislation you talked about, but also the fact that we like it or not, the General Assembly is the one that has given us authority to do things or not do things. And they don't have any pending legislation right now, but they're getting ready to come back into session here in about four or 5 months. So I guess we've been dealing with this now for 4 or 5 months, and it just seems to me that at this point, given the pending legislation in front of the Fifth Circuit, potentially going to the Supreme Court, and lack of legislation in front of our General Assembly related to this, that your recommendation seems to me to make a lot of sense. So Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we ask the administration to develop a pro-life resolution versus the ordinance and present it in September. That we do seek the AG ruling on this issue, and that we ask the zoning commission to take a look at our zoning ordinance and see what options we might have there.
Have a motion before the board. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Yes. First of all, I didn't realize we were entertaining a motion, and I thought we were discussing the original ordinance. And somehow in that discussion, we got a new motion. We have a resolution here that you've presented. Is that Is this what you're referring to?
I haven't read it.
Okay.
It is a draft. It's something that I've, prepared for your consideration if you want to go in that direction, but, certainly open to any revisions or comments.
Okay, well, I, as far as your resolution goes, because like I said, we just got this a couple of days ago. And, since we're in the middle of a discussion here, in the Article 3 of your resolution, it says Grayson County Board of Supervisors here affirms to uphold this resolution by all means within its power and authority in accordance with its reasonable responsibility as elected representatives of the residents of Grayson County in accordance with federal and state laws to the maximum extent practical. The ordinance that you just discussed with us is only asking that we are in compliance with federal law. I don't understand the difference then.
Well, I think the resolution, right?
The resolution says we stay in accordance with federal law. The ordinance, the original ordinance, the one that you've been discussing for the last hour, it's asking that we stay in accordance with federal law.
And the critical language, I think, is to the extent practicable, state and federal law. And right now, in my view, state law tells us that we're not the entity to enforce that.
Based on the Dillon rule, is that your?
Based on the Dillon rule and the fact that there's explicit legislation on abortion in Virginia.
Because there's other law professors that state the opposite of what you're saying.
There are.
So we're getting one side of the story in this quasi, and I go back to it, this quasi public hearing without including the public. And I'm not blaming you, Mr. Durbin. I know you're doing your job. I'm not blaming you, county administrator. But this is smoke and mirrors. 101 again to the citizens of these people. Not you, but what's going on here. And I just hope that everybody realizes what's going on. Because I don't even think the resolution here that you proposed, I think the opposition would love that. Because I think they'll have a field day with that. And we won't have any pro bono backup on that. That's all I have to share.
Okay, so the motion then before the board is to, as I understand it, have staff.
I'll go over again.
Yes, sir.
So the motion is that the staff develop a pro-life resolution versus, for presentation in September, that we seek AG ruling on the issue. And that we ask the zoning, the planning commission to look at our zoning laws, for any, flexibility we might have, when it comes to this issue.
You understood, Mr. Ives, you seconded. Okay. Any further discussion?
Yes. Can we push that till December 14th? So we just do it all in one whack?
So a motion,
Each state
a motion to table the matter or to postpone consideration to a later time is a motion that can be made under Robert's rules, and if made, it would have to be decided on before the main motion.
So we'll take the original. Okay, is there a, Mr. Anderson has made a second motion.
Or amendment to the motion, we wanted to bring it up in September.
Right. Okay.
Why not wait till December,
Okay,
like we were doing with the original?
So that's a motion, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you were getting there. That's a motion to amend.
yeah, motion to amend. And so we'll hear that motion prior to the carrying through of the original motion. Is there a second to the motion to amend? Okay, hearing none, then the motion dies. All right, any further discussion on the original motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion before the board signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Chair also aye.
Thank you, Mr.
Next, under old business, Jay Black with the resolutions, amending Dixie Rd. And also the Camp Dickenson Rd.
Thank you all. I wrote down a paragraph or two so that I can get my point across. So bear with me. So tonight I present to you the final resolution for the amendment of a portion of Dixie Road from the secondary systems of state highways as required by section 32.2-909 of the Code of Virginia. The notice of willingness to hold a public hearing was posted on the front of the courthouse doors and advertised in the local newspaper having circulation twice. Both notices were verified and ran on July 5th and July 19th. There were no requests to hold a public hearing. So the resolution, the sketch of street assembly and the AM 4.3 before you tonight were vetted and provided by the VDOT Office of Land Use Management Engineer, Mr. John Bowling. Confirmation from Mr. Bowling was received by staff via email that the abandonment was entered into VDOT's roadway inventory management system and given a number in the inventory change record for tracking those purposes. Dixie Road ICR number is 39116249. With all of that being said, does anyone have questions? Would you like for me to read the resolution?
Please.
All right, so notice of proposed road abandonment, Route 756, Dixie Road from the secondary system of state highways amended. Whereas a public notice was posted as prescribed by section 33.2-909, the Code of Virginia, announcing a public hearing to receive comments concerning abandoning a section of road described on the project sketch and VDOT form AM 4.3 attached and incorporated herein as part of this resolution from the secondary system of state highways. And whereas the Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Transportation was provided and prescribed notice of this board's intent to abandon the subject section of road. And whereas after considering all evidence available, this board is satisfied that no public necessity exists for the continuance of the section of secondary Route 756 from Route 763 to Route 701 for a distance of 0.602 miles. And hereby deems that section of road is no longer necessary as part of the secondary system of state highways. And now therefore it be resolved, this board abandons the above described section of Route 756, removes it from the secondary system of state highways pursuant to section 33.2-909, the Code of Virginia, and be it finally resolved, a certified copy of the resolution be forwarded to the resident administrator of the Virginia Department of Transportation.
Any questions from any of the board? Okay. So this one, need a motion to adopt the resolution into the call. So second. Mr. Anderson. This will require, as I said, a roll call vote. Mr. Anderson. Aye. Mr. Fenton.
Aye.
Mr. Wright. Aye. Mr. Bell. Aye. Chair also aye.
You ready? All right, so this one is for Camp Dickenson. So I'm bringing back before you tonight an amendment resolution of the notice of intent to abandon a portion of Camp Dickenson Lane for your consideration. The request to amend and re-advertise for the notice of intent to abandon of Camp Dickenson Lane is due to an invalid and incorrect description and lack of date in the first resolution. This determination was made by VDOT's land development engineer, Mr. Bowling. Originally, the information we used for advertising was that anyone could request a public hearing for abandonment. However, this is not the case for this particular road. Depending upon the type of abandonment in regards to section 33.2909C of the Code of Virginia, in short, VDOT or an abutting landowner may request a public hearing under section 33.2909 for secondary abandonments. DWR, Department of Wildlife Resources, can also request a public hearing only if the abandonment involves a public landing. And I've done my due diligence there. DWR indicated that there is not a public landing. So Mr. Boland also shared with me that the confusion in our verbiage that the county had used to advertise in the past was likely from section 33.2909 under primary abandonments. And it states that, in short, any landowner in the county can request a public hearing. In this case, Camp Dickenson is a secondary road. It is not a primary road. So additionally, the amendment to the resolution will correct the descriptions. The sketch and street assembly, which is also provided with the resolution, was provided to us, verbiage and sketch, by the engineer, Mr. Bowling, out of the land use office. So therefore, I'm requesting that the board tonight reconsider adopting the new revised and amended resolution of intent to abandon the 0.05 mile section of Camp Dickenson Lane so that the county can provide VDOT, Camp Dickenson, and the general public with clear and concise information. Do you have any questions for me?
Does Camp Dickenson own the board of it, they own both sides?
Yes, sir.
So then, in essence, nobody can say against it.
No, sir. You want me to read the resolution?
You did good the first time.
I'll try again. So notice of intent to abandon a portion of Camp Dickenson Lane from the secondary system of state highways amended. Whereas it appears to the board that secondary highway Route 640 from 0.85 mile east of Route 638 to 0.90 mile east of Route 638, a distance of 0.05 miles serves no public necessity and is no longer necessary as part of the secondary system of state highways. Now therefore be it resolved, the clerk of the board is directed to post and publish notice of the board's intent to abandon in the aforementioned segment pursuant to section 33.2909 of the Code of Virginia of 1950 as amended. Be it further resolved that a certified copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Commissioner of the Virginia Department of Transportation, adopted by the Grayson County Board of Supervisors on the 10th day of August 2023. So this measure was adopted upon the following vote of the board.
Is there a motion before the board for adoption of the resolution?
So moved.
So, any discussion? Okay, this will require roll call vote. Mr. Anderson? Aye. Mr. Finger?
Aye.
Mr. Ivy? Aye. Mr. Belton? Aye. Chair also aye.
Thanks, Joe.
Staff, is there new business?
New business, dealt with the ordinance for the polling places, second, number 8 is the resolution Virginia 250. The Virginia Tourism Corporation, which is a state entity, asked each county to pass this resolution, form a committee, and plan events celebrating our nation's 250th birthday. It's coming. Guidance is forthcoming. They provided the language for the resolution, and we hopefully will expect grant money to do this. So Tracy will take on this endeavor. If you haven't read, state of Virginia has pushed forward $30 billion, $30.3 billion in grant money to help with tourism this next year. Would you like me to read the resolution?
Yes, sir.
Any questions before I read them? Okay. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of the county is dedicated to the furtherance of economic development and tourism in the county of Grayson. Whereas the Virginia American 250 Commission was created in 2020 by the General Assembly for the purpose of preparing for commemorating the 250th anniversary of Virginia's participation in American independence. Whereas VA 250 has requested that each locality form a committee to aid in planning for the commemoration period. Whereas the County of Grayson will form a local 250 VA 250 committee. Whereas the committee will plan and coordinate programs occurring in the locality, communicate regularly with the VA 250. Whereas the Board of Supervisors wishes to undertake this endeavor with Virginia VA 250 to promote and commemorate this important historic milestone. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Grayson. The Board of Supervisors hereby desires to support the Virginia American 250 Commission and their efforts to commemorate the 250th anniversary of Virginia's participation in American independence. The County of Grayson will form a committee to aid in the planning for the commemoration period adopted by the Grayson County Supervisors on the 10th of August.
Chair, entertain a motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? This will require roll call vote. Mr. Anderson? Aye. Mr. Fan?
Aye.
Mr. Ivy? Aye. Mr. Bell? Chair also aye.
Our chair, 2 board appointments that we discussed. First one was on the planning commission. Don Dudley no longer wishes to serve on the planning commission. New appointee will fill the remainder of his term, which expires 12/31/2026. Any nominations for
No, sir.
Sure. Rec Advisory Committee is a 3-year term. John Alexander resigned from the committee at the end of May. New appointee will fill the remainder of the term, which expires 12/31/23.
So I have that one, and I think Mr. Casey Johnson is interested. Might not get you his email, but he wants some description about the, I told him what the rec committee does, but he needs the application and all that, so he's, we might have a winner. So,
Okay. Number 10 is the Mount Rogers Community Services Performance Contract Summary. It's in your packet for your review. If you have any questions, please let me know. But this is just the annual contract that we get each year. And list services are provided, the things they do as a regional entity. Any questions on that?
did it change our contribution at all?
Yes, sir. 10,000. Change it by $10,000.
And given where we are, budget season just started last month, did we account for that increase?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
Make a motion to approve.
One point of clarification, just probably for the citizens that this is a regional partnership and that they put in double what we put in as a county. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear about that. Any questions? Any other questions? Yeah. Okay.
Have a motion with a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Abstain. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair also aye.
Okay, number 10 is surplus of county vehicle, several maintenance items. Alan's just trying to clean up and get rid of any unnecessary equipment that we have. The 1999 Crown Vic will all pass inspection. I think we'll try to put this in a consent agenda moving forward. Any questions about this?
Motion approved. Motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Mr. Anderson. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye.
Okay, number 12 is a scheduled work session to discuss regional radio system improvements. We all know some of the challenges we have with our 911 system, and we at our last joint session in KLAX, they asked us to schedule a session so we can discuss the path forward for each local entity that we put into the County. We listed 5 dates for potential discussion.
I'm not saying, I just hope that we can do this sooner than later. I started with the Grayson County Sheriff's Office in 1984. I know communication issues in the west end of the county and down on the Brush Creek area, some of the areas down in around my district. There was a lot of issues, and this is something that doesn't need to be kicking the can on down the road. We've got a lot of valuable assets out here in our fire and rescue people that we need to be providing them with the communications they need to get their job done. And so I hope we get this done.
You know, we stood up a wireless service authority a few months ago, and given that this system or some system like that is going to require integration with what we're trying to do on the broadband and cellular side, could we schedule our first wireless service authority meeting as this meeting and integrate the discussion with the radio system with the broadband and the cellular piece?
Makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm good with the dates, any of those dates, but I just wonder if the board's okay with that approach. And we do that authority meeting, and then that way we try to address them all.
So do we have a date? Say
In the packet, I thought we listed 1, 2, 3, 5 dates for your consideration.
I'm good with all of them, so.
We're gonna work it out. Just work it out later.
Yeah.
Send you a text.
Next brings us to county administrator's report.
Okay, try to go quick here. The Baywood School meeting is on 9/11 at 6 p.m. at the school gym. George Stidham will post the meeting time on Facebook, and flyers will be out in the community. So please try and spread the word so we get as much participation as possible. The County Ag Fair starts today. It goes through Saturday. We have a website up where you can find all the information. It's GraysonCountyFair.com. It's a pretty good website if you're looking for something. I looked at it today. Nice website. I think, did Duncan booth go down? Did you hear that? Okay.
It's MIA apparently.
Okay.
Somebody stole it.
I think there's several of us headed for the Duncan booth if you want to go pay your money for that. Reminder, this is Clean River Month. Cleanup is each Saturday. Last Saturday we had to cancel because the river was moving too quick and too muddy. We did have the tri-area ribbon cutting this morning in Freeze with several of our supervisors there. They have a great mission statement. If you haven't been there, I would recommend that you stop by the facility. The mission statement is really to provide quality and affordable care while meeting the needs of the community. They want to be ingrained in the community. They do not turn anyone away regardless of income. And they scale costs based on income, insurance, those needs. And we have 2 facilities now, one Grant, one Freeze. I thought they did a really nice job today, and they're really pushing forward towards helping folks that need help and helping the underserved. I did meet with Wood Grain this week. Great business going on. I've never been out there before. They're employing 80 people in the county, 80 of our citizens. And they want to hire local people and train them. Just like most of the businesses in Grayson County, they need labor. They need workers. They are sending folks to electrician school and different types of schools to train them and grow them in the county. They're looking to grow and recruit our citizens. In our staff meeting this week, our building official talked about all the activity that's taking place in Grayson County, which I found interesting. So I ran a few numbers. We currently have 55 residential permits open in the county. And that's anything from a 700-foot cabin to a 7,000 square foot house. Most of the permits over for normal size houses, which is good. And just for comparison, I think I had Becky run reports for the previous years. In 2018, we had 29 permits, 29, we got to 55 of them now. 2019, 29, 2020, COVID, we dropped 24, 21, 36, and 22, we got to 51. Now we're at 23, we'll certainly surpass that. So that shows me some signs of growth in the county building. We're moving in the right direction. The other thing that I would mention is one of the comments that was brought to me was that we need to do a better job lashing up between what's going on in planning and the building official and the front office. And so we created another layer. So if someone's coming in to look at a building or someone's coming in to build something, that Mitch or I can get engaged quickly and make sure we can usher them through the process, whether through the EDA or some other issue that we can kind of shepherd them and ensure they stay in Grayson County. Vicki Novak, who runs our day report, provided the end of year fiscal year closeout data. And the county saved $220,000 in jail time by diverting people from jail into the community. That's up roughly $40,000, and from last year, that's 22%. Was yesterday afternoon late at the park. A young man was up there picking up trash. So I decided to talk to him for a second. He's one of these young men. And he told me the story of his life, how he got hooked on methamphetamine, how he was selling it, and that Vicki and this young man right here, Nathan, who's now his sponsor, and he's in a, probably saved his life. And he is a full-time worker at Food City. And what else could we ask for is our, taking a guy who was headed down a road of despair, and now we changed the path that he's on. So thank you, brother. Appreciate that. The VA tourism. Virginia Tourism Corporation held a summit last week. I was in Whitfield, and our tourism department won 2 awards. And I'll bring them to you real quick. The first award they won was they won Best Short Video. It was created in 2020 as a 3-minute video, which we edited into 15 to 30 seconds. And we use them on social media, digital ads, official Virginia welcome centers, and TV commercials. We also use them for audio and radio commercials. If we can play it real quick, that'd be great. Can we play that or no? Will it play? I want you to see it if possible. I think she did that for about $1,500 or something. So it's a pretty good little video. Second award, we won the best video for an event. It's basically a slideshow set to music created by Peach Bottom Partners for the 2023 Legends of Grayson Festival. And Kevin Combs or Freeze took the pictures and put the slides together. He volunteered to do that. It was shown at the opening of the Legends of Grayson, if you were there, festival, and as an opening of the event, and it was shared widely on social media. Those were 2 awards that we won. Got it up? Is it quick?
Well, I know
That's much more. Thank
Are there? Yeah, but the one that was you want to get out? Yes. Well, that one looks good.
Congratulations on your Well, it's chipping away at it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, here.
Start. It gets really hot. We're gonna look at the resolution because everybody's got a great information. I think yeah, did you? I was gonna say, did you see anything
Yeah. Oh, nice. When you showed me how empty it was, I thought it was gonna have. Well.
Oh, yeah. You hadn't seen it?
You get a picture?
Yeah, I got one.
I got two because you texted me. I said, "Yeah, I haven't texted you."
Did he say?
We're gonna keep this.
Move on that.
Trying that.
Trying to get things restarted.
Might be a long night.
Yeah.
All right, call our meeting back to order. This time brings us to the registered speakers in the public comment portion of the agenda. And we do have several speakers signed up to speak. As I have in the past, I would remind everyone to be respectful of this proceeding and allow each person to speak their point that they have come here to make. And also remind each one, as I get reminded at the end of each meeting, that the comment period is limited to 3 minutes. And so try to help me out with that. And with that, we'll go ahead with our first speaker. And if you will, as you come up to speak, please state your name and your address. Okay, our first registered speaker is Sam Pierce.
So as you said, my name is Sam Pierce. My address is 3347 Old Bailey Road. Actually, a lot of what I had intended to say now, given some of the comments made earlier, some of the information that came to light through Mr. Durbin isn't necessarily relevant. But I do want to confirm what Mr. Anderson said earlier, in terms of, and sorry, I guess I should have made it clear what I'm talking about is the Sanctuary County issue. I'd like to back up what he said, that those of us that are in favor of this ordinance going through were in support of it, knowing full well that this is most likely going to end up in a lawsuit, and hoping to see that because of the issues that would bring to light. That was kind of the whole point to begin with, because, you know, let's be honest, this is not a place that's going to be high on the list of people looking to build abortion clinics. This isn't really something that we have a huge immediate threat of. So I would like to see that go through. And I understand that there are concerns, and they're legitimate concerns. We do have a certain amount of authority given to the federal and state government, but there is a higher authority than them that, whether they recognize it or not, they are beholden to. We're created beings. We don't get to arbitrarily come up with our own laws. We are held to a higher standard, and that creator has told us not to murder. And there's, you know, if we're not able to go through with the ordinance for some reason, I would love to see this resolution pass. I'd love to see, you know, something come out of this. But in terms of enforcement, we already have laws on the book that are against murder, that say that in, you know, all of Virginia, and not just Grayson County, but we do have laws prohibiting murder. All we need is a coherent and consistent application of those laws to take care of the issue entirely. But when the time comes to vote on this, I would urge you to do whatever you can to advance this, to go through with the ordinance, or if, you know, failing that, the resolution, just something that, even though we're kind of a low risk area, something that we as citizens can be proud of our county for, that we've made the statement that here, at least, we're not going to allow children to be murdered, not legally anyway. Thank you.
Next speaker is Tina Cunningham.
Good evening. I'm Tina Cunningham. I reside in the Wilson District at 155 Bear Tree Lane. Excuse me, Bear Tree Lane in Troutdale. And I appreciate the opportunity to provide a statement this evening. I'm speaking tonight in favor of a person's right to make their own medical decisions in light of the sanctuary, abortion sanctuary ordinance. Now, many of the people who are adamantly against any kind of gun control are also the same people who are supporting this ordinance. But why do people want to decide for others whether or not to use a certain medical procedure? Why do we want to take away a person's right to choose what happens to their own bodies? Grayson County didn't legislate that all the citizens get COVID vaccinations during the pandemic, although many deaths resulted from the decision not to receive those vaccinations. Grayson County hasn't legislated that citizens must not seek medical care when they are sick or injured. You will say, it's because it's a child, it's a life. The Bible says it's wrong. That is a moral argument, and each person must make peace with their own consciences and their individual situation. It's not up to you or to me to make that decision for someone else. Now, the Bible's been widely quoted in these chambers, but many people have forgotten that our Constitution mandates the separation of church and state. Now, if you want to quote the Bible, I refer you to Luke 31. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. And also to Mark 12, verses 30 to 31. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and all your strength. The second commandment is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. I thank you for your attention.
Ken Strong.
Man,
My name is Kevin Strawn. I live at 297 Mountain Breeze Road, or Lane, depending on your preference. And all of my issues were very aptly addressed by Mr. Durbin, so I'm giving up my time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Next, Candace Stevenson.
I'm Candace Stevenson. I live at 615 Heights Ranch Road. Thank you, Mr. Durbin, for going into depth over this issue and discussing it. It's my strongest hope for the citizens of this county that we can go into the same depth of that issue for the thousands of people that have signed a petition to stop the chemical aerial spraying in this county. So we have over 3,000 signatures, and there's 15,300 in this county. It's a lot of people that want to stop the chemical trespassing. We're a small organized group, and we're working tirelessly to protect you all from this poisoning. It's a point source polluter in this county. One point source polluter spraying every one of us. Can this county demand provisions on the leases that protect landowners and their neighbors? Because there's no provision for pesticide safety or poisoning or water damages on anybody's lease. Except for one, it was a one-liner. There was no before or after water test. We found that these chemicals are directly affecting the health of our residents. People have been having issues that have leased their own land, unknowingly that it's caused them their health. And we have met with multiple people who can't do anything now. We've also tested water. Now, Virginia does a reduced water testing, and we send this information out. Nearby land uses or agricultural operations, you want to test for nitrates, coliform bacteria, and pesticides. So we can't get a test for pesticides for some reason. So we need somehow for like a emergency management group to be pulled together. We have got proof of pesticides being in our water. Otherwise, our nitrates wouldn't be 7.4, coliform wouldn't be present, and people are drinking this water. This is water that came from people's drinking water, right out of their tap, and they're continuing to be poisoned. This person that I tested this water can't get out of bed and hasn't been able to for years. They leased in 2011, and they can't go back now. They need it for their health. They're very sick. Many other people are in this situation. We got water testing. We were asked on their own form if you live within a half a mile of ag spraying. That's every one of us almost. And if you do, you need to test for coliform and nitrates and pesticides. Now, what happens when you do that and you get nitrates and coliform in your water? Then what? We're drinking it? What do? We're a small organization that volunteers our time. We need a lot of people that can help back us up to get all this testing we need done. We have 100% so far of damaged, ruined water of one test that proved that this person was sickened by this poison. How many other people haven't ever had a test or the option to get a test? We need the county to push for some kind of massive emergency group that it can't be us unless y'all want to pay us to do it, and we could. But please help us here, y'all. We appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Nancy Green.
I live at 757 Cherrywood Lane in Independence. I don't have a prepared statement, but Mr. Durbin did an excellent job explaining everything to us. And that was going to be my statement, but I'll just kind of go off of what, give a comment here. I'm sure that no child in Grayson County that would be abandoned or given up would go without a home. Everyone that I know in Grayson County is very loving toward children. Grayson County is not like the rest of the country, unfortunately. Some of the country, yes, but there are many, many children whose bodies would be forced into this world who would have no chance at life at all. No one is thinking about that when they say, I don't want any woman to have an abortion. Who can judge the soul of any woman who has that choice to make? A mother will look at a soul and make the decision if she can give it life or not. This goes way beyond government dictate or regulation. Of course, I take this very deeply. It's very disturbing to me to think that the choice of a woman or child is taken away by government dictate. So that's what's been on my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nancy Liebrick.
Well, I spoke last time, Nancy Liebrick, 6803 Riverside Drive, Freeze. When I was here the last time, I spoke about the futility of abortion laws. I was 26 when Roe v. Wade was decided. So I have very clear memories of what it was like. And it wasn't some kind of wonderful time when women just kept babies. Abortion, per capita rates of abortion were probably higher than they are now. But I was intending to speak to some of the comments that were made last time. But I would like to, in light of Mr. Durbin's presentation, offer some more thoughts from my personal experience. It's very likely I am the only person in this room who has ever brought a constitutional lawsuit. I'm not an attorney, but I have a very good idea of what this means, what it means in terms of the demands on finances, on time. This will be time that we in the county spend chasing, tilting at windmills and not solving the problems of healthcare, jobs, foster children. I didn't have the backing of the ACLU, but I managed to exhaust the legal budget for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the Walla Walla district. That's one. So when Mr. Durbin tells you about the expenses entailed in this kind of lawsuit, depositions, copies, court filings, the problems of an adverse judgment that you might have to pay, he's not spitting into the wind. I know this from my personal experience. Quite frankly, I was appalled when I first heard that this was being presented in Grayson County. My first thought was, Mr. Dixon and Mr. Mitchell want us to be their patsies, to be their test case. Quite frankly, if you want to minimize the possibility of abortion, you want to save children's lives, ask Mr. Mitchell to send us all of the money he's going to spend doing this, and we will provide daycare throughout the county. We will provide postpartum medical care to uninsured young women in Grayson County. The United States has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the country. So, if you want to save kids, you want to save
Thank you, Ms.
women,
Lee.
send us that money, we can use it.
Thank you. Next is, Laura George.
I'm Laura George, 119 Norfolk Summit Circle, Independence. I want to add my gratitude to the people who stood tonight, to Mr. Durbin for coming forward and giving us a really thorough debrief. As an attorney, I agree with the very first point he made, which is that you're never going to see this reach the federal question. Now I know someone else wants to sue as well, so Nancy, way to go. And there could be multiple lawsuits, not just one, because while some people are going to bring a lawsuit based on the Dillon rule, which will kick this out really fast. So in that regard, at least you won't spend too much money and time. The one thing Mr. Durbin didn't address is the lawsuit that I would file. He did not talk about the First Amendment. And that is what's going on around the nation. People who are not evangelical Christian do not believe that life starts at conception. So the speakers who speak in favor of this ordinance are all evangelical Christians. It's clear, every one of them. And they want you to know that. They're proud of that, and they should be proud of what they believe. It's everyone's right in this country to have their own view of deity, of the Godhead, of what happens when we die, what happens when there's conception. But the point is, this is a religious ordinance, and that's a lawsuit I'm going to file, and that wasn't addressed tonight. And you might want to ask Mr. Durbin to debrief you on the religious lawsuits that are raging around the nation. Because Roe was not decided on the First Amendment. Roe was decided on the 14th Amendment. So I've said it a couple times and I'll repeat it again. Jewish people in particular are outraged at these sorts of ordinances because in their religion, life does not start until you are born. So it's fine if some people in this county believe it's personhood is conception. That's great, but most of the world does not. The other thing I want to point out is that we're already paying for this ordinance. We paid for Mr. Durbin to do this research, to come here tonight. I don't think Mitchell and Dixon are paying for that. So we're already footing the bill for a religiously motivated ordinance. This nonsense needs to stop. So please, what John Fant moved tonight made eminent sense. I'm glad 4 of you voted in favor of it. I can pledge for myself, not for others, that I would not be filing a lawsuit if it's a resolution. But do not legislate to us a minority Christian view on when life starts, and certainly this county has no right to criminalize any sort of behavior when there's a Virginia statute on point. I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's not it. We have a petition going. Sorry. And it's co-sponsored by residents of Grayson County. But I didn't hear the music. Anyway, you always cut me off before the music. So I'm gonna pass, I'm gonna pass this up. This is.
Well, you can share that on all if you like.
Well, I want you guys to know about it. So I'm gonna give it to our county administrator. You're aware? Yeah, this is a Virginia alliance. It's not even just Grayson County.
Next speaker is, sorry if I mispronounced it, John Zukowski.
My name is John Zukowski, 117 Sandy Knoll Lane, over here in Edmond. As a first responder, I signed on to this community to defend life, protect life. So I believe in the sanctuary for city for the unborn. I have 88 signatures right here on the petition, which there's plenty more going around. I didn't have a speech prepared. I was asked to get up here and stand for what I believe is right. God created life, and it's up to God to take it away. Thank you.
Next speaker is Tracy Cummins.
Tracy Cummins, 743 Powder Mill Road. Thank you, Mr. Durbin, for addressing the questions I asked. Thank you for doing that and bringing it to my level. I am not a legally minded person. And I want to say several things. I'll try to keep it short, but Gigabeam, I want to say Tom and Gigabeam have been a wonderful thing for me. So I want to stand up for them. They are working hard. They have personally come to my house and set up this internet system for Wi-Fi for without the wire because we couldn't get it through there, and it works really well. So I want to invite everyone that needs internet, come to my house. We will watch the movie Unplanned, and I will take up donations for our new pregnancy resource center. Okay, we are really nothing new there, but we are hoping to start having someone present in the afternoons, one afternoon a week at First Baptist Church. We do need you all to help us get the word out. So we do want to help people. I get it. I get both sides of this debate. I happen to enjoy living life, so I do lean more toward life. But anyway, I get it. I want to help people who don't have the support or the resources if they do want to choose to have their child, or if they want to give the child up for adoption or foster this child. I want to be able to help people make those choices. And as Christians, yes, Christians who believe that life begins at conception, Messianic Jewish who believes life begins at conception, Orthodox Jewish believe that too. So I do believe that. Now, things that you all have said, I understand. We're not going to solve the deep problems. We're not, because the root of the problem is the sinful heart. We all need Jesus Christ. And I am thankful to say I have him. And if you would like me to answer any questions about that, I would love to. I would love to share that most of all, Jesus is the only reason I stand here to love my neighbor as myself. I do. And I encourage all Christians to because we get the bad rap. We're the ones judging. Love your neighbor as yourself, like they have said. That is a very good point. And we need to do that as Christians. I want to do that with this pregnancy resource center. I've gotten some donations. Thank you guys. Keep on coming. We don't have the 501(c) yet, but we're working on it. It's a work in progress. So we want your support. We want your church's support. So please reach out to me, 276-768-8744. We have a Facebook page, and we also have a website. So check us out.
Next speaker is Billy Toller.
My name's Billy Toller. I'm 407 Winding Road, Freeze, Virginia. I'm a pastor at a New Beginning Church in Freeze. And I didn't come to speak tonight, but the Lord laid on my heart when I heard you preach there, open the service tonight. You know, you open with prayer. And I look up there and I see in God we trust. And that in God we trust is above each and every one of your all. You know, God trusts you all to make the right decision, you know, and everybody in this room tonight is going to stand before God one day.
Amen.
And give account of what you did in your life.
Amen.
And I'm not here judging nobody because I'm going to have to stand before God myself.
Amen.
And that's why I'm here tonight, because God laid on my heart to come up here because I'm going to have to stand before God. And if I didn't come up here tonight before my church, because my church people couldn't come tonight, but God laid on my heart that I had to come because I'm going to have to stand before him one day. And I'm doing my part tonight coming up here and letting you all know that it's not right. Abortion is not right. You open up God's word and it's in God's word. Killing these babies is not right. They're killing them all the way up to where they're born. It's not right. The next time y'all walk in this room, you look up there and you see in God we trust. And if that don't let you all know that you are making the wrong decision, if you do this, when you walk in here and you see that word right there, that will be it. That will let you all know that if you all do this and you stand before God, because everybody We're all, one day, it don't matter what religion, it don't matter where you come from, what we've done in our lives, we're all gonna stand before God one day. It don't matter how rich you are, it don't matter how poor you are. We're all gonna stand before God one day. We all know that. We come from the earth, we're gonna return to the earth one day. Do you want the blood of these babies on you? I don't. When I left my home this evening to come up here, I had my little 1-month-old grandbaby in my arms. I don't want that blood on me. I beg you all. I'm a 52-year-old man. I'm begging you all with everything in my heart. Don't do it because you will be judged. I'm not judging you. I love everybody in this room tonight. I'm begging you with everything in my heart. Don't do it because you will stand before God and you'll have to be held accountable. I'm begging you with everything in my heart. Every time you walk in this room and you see it up there, you might take it down, but you'll remember it for the rest of your life.
David Osborne, 248 Mountain View Road, Independence, Virginia. Just a few more names to support the ordinance. The book of Isaiah, the book of Ezekiel speaks of the watchman on the wall. The watchman is someone that would sit on the wall. They'd watch over the city. If they saw trouble coming afar, they would sound the trumpet. If they saw trouble within, they would sound the trumpet. And as a pastor of church, God has placed me as a watchman on the wall for Grayson County. Just want to warn you guys, take a word. We do have 2 federally funded clinics in Grayson County. Is that correct?
Well, what you're asking a question.
Freeze.
Yeah, so it's a,
Right down.
they're not, they get some funding. I don't know if it's from state or feds, to be honest.
They're federal.
It's primary care. You gotta realize there's nurse practitioners.
Okay. You could go online. Mr. Durbin talked about Googling something. You can go online and Google, how can I have an abortion in a federal funded clinic? I have the paperwork. I didn't bring it with me, but you can Google it yourself. And there's organizations that's pro-abortion that lays out step by step how you can have an abortion in a federal funded clinic. And you can call them and they'll walk you through the steps. So what I'm saying, you said there's no hospitals, whatever being built in Grayson County. We already have the ability of abortion in Grayson County in those 2 federal clinics. If that happens and we don't do anything to prevent that, that blood, as you just heard a man say, is on our hands. I'd like to point out the fact that Ms. George is not going to sue your resolution or your zoning, tells you there's no teeth in it as far as protection of abortion. She is completely for abortion. She wants it free and legal. By the fact that she's not suing it, tells you that there's no teeth in it. I am just sounding for the watchman on the wall. I appreciate you guys. You're on our prayer list at church. We pray for every one of you. I'll call you every Sunday. We pray for you guys. We're still praying for you guys. In God we trust. You just saw, mentioned this, that, and you heard from Mr. Durbin and Tracy that God has presented before us an opportunity to make a difference in abortion in the United States of America. In God we trust. In God we trust. If you don't take advantage of that opportunity, let me warn you, just from God, that we are on the verge of blasphemy. Look up blasphemy in Webster's dictionary and see what it says about the opportunities that God presents before you. I'm praying for you guys to do the right thing. I encourage you to seek your heart and your soul before the God that you will stand before one day, and make sure that your soul, that you're doing anything that's best for Grayson County.
Concludes the portion of the agenda. We have no closed session. Chair, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And also aye.
Watch out for the railroad, y'all.